How's everyone? I'm Ankana, your social science master teacher at Vedantu, hoping all our batches are doing absolutely amazing at home. Do tell me how are you guys are holding up. I mean, I know it's a difficult time, it definitely is for me and all of us, and I know for a fact. Okay, so let's quickly get started without wasting any more time. And before I actually get started with the chapter, there's something important that I want to talk to you about. It's actually about something that has been brought to my notice by you guys. These are the problems that are being faced by you, by my dear bachas, by all our students. And what are these problems that we're talking about? These are about doubts, questions that you guys have, questions that you're not able to clarify, questions that you're not sure where to clarify and how to clarify. These are about notes. You don't know where to get it, how to get it, what is the exact part that you should be reading, what is not, that I mean, like, what is causing sort of a problem for you, all of these things. Then tests and assignments, where do you get these practice papers from, where do you get the practice tests from, what assignments should you be working on. Then of course the competitive exams, I mean, like, how do I get prepared for that. The choice of schedule, ma'am, what schedule needs to be followed, what is the timetable, what is the routine, how do I figure out that I don't miss on anything, that I'm not running late, that I'm not lagging behind. And most importantly, choice of language. I mean, this entire new channel has been created because there was a lot of trouble in this language, right? Okay, so guys, the good news is all of these problems have been sorted out for you. I mean, like, so awesome. And not just that, we have come with an additional gift for you, certain bonuses. You know, you get unlimited live classes, all these crash courses, micro courses, all of these are available for you. And with live performance reports, like, you get your performance reports immediately to get an understanding of where you stand and how much you're prepared for your exams. And of course, personalized attention. Right now, that's one thing that I know for a fact all of you are kind of longing for, and all of this could be sorted. How? You just need to go and click on this link. Bus, that's all you're supposed to do. That is it. So simple. Yeah, it's that simple, right? Okay, so once you click on this link, you'll be taken to this page where you're supposed to choose your grade, then choose your board, then of course check out the details. You don't have to just listen to Ankana Ma'am. You can listen to her and go to this link, but all those details that you need, extra information, is available right there for you to see for yourself. And I'm sure after that you won't be able to resist, and you will end up clicking on that get subscription button. That's all you're supposed to do. And this is a golden opportunity for you to become a part of the Vedantu family with Vedantu Pro Bacha. So awesome, right? And then you'll be directed to the page where you'll get an option of choosing any package that you want. You know, number of days. If you just want to trial for a few days, you can go ahead with 1 month. Then you have option for 3 months, 6 months, and everything has its own benefits. Right, the longer period you choose, the better discount you get. Otherwise, if you want to just go ahead with a short period of time and try how does it feel to be a part of the family, you can do even that. So all these options are available for you right there. But how do you get this discount? How does the magic of this coupon happen? So all you're supposed to do is go on apply coupon, and you're supposed to put this coupon right there, which is AKEPRO. So you're supposed to go on, click on this link, follow the steps that I've just told you. In the coupon code, you're supposed to apply AKEPRO, because you're my dear bachas, you should get some advantage of that, isn't it? Okay, guys, if you do not apply this code, the advantage will not, you will not be able to access the advantage, access the discount. So make sure you're copying the coupon code and you're pasting it there so that you get the discount. Okay. Now let's move to the discussion of the homework question from last session. So the answer was C, Jharkhand, my home state. Okay, and people who have answered the fastest are Unleashed, the Big Dog, Avni Saxena, and Katal Royani. Congrats you guys, I'm so proud of you. Rest of you guys, do remember your names can also appear here. All you're supposed to do is answer very quick after you watch the video, but where? Not just in the live chat, but also in the comment box, because we do not pick the names from the live chat, guys. It's just it's only applicable when you're online. Later the comment box is there, so make sure that you are putting it in the comments below the video, and also that you're liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Chalo, fatafat, quickly let's move forward and discuss what are we going to do today. So today we are going to talk about soil. If you remember, we spoke all about land, one of the most important resources. Today we are going to talk about second most important resource, which is soil. Soil as a resource, its classification, erosion, conversion, and in the end comes your most important 1-mark question for homework. So stay tuned because these questions are going to be very, very important from the perspective of examination and of course for your practice. Okay, so let's talk about soil first of all. I mean, soil and land are two things so generic that we have somewhere made it very underrated. We have taken it for granted and do not realize the importance for it. And that's the whole idea of doing this, right? Covering this topic right here. So as I told you, it's one of the most important resources. But what's interesting about it is that it is a renewable resource. It can be renewed, okay? Now you might be thinking, but it takes so many years to form. How could it be renewable? And it is true. Formation of even few centimeters of the soil takes millions and millions of years. Like you can imagine, few centimeters, millions of years. The proportion is like huge. So yeah, it can be renewed, but it doesn't mean that we should take it for granted, because of course it takes a lot of time to renew. We should be very, very careful about it, and hence we should always also conserve it, right? Okay, now let's talk about soil. So soil is basically, guys, as all of us know, it supports the different living organisms. Why and how? So a lot of us are dependent on it because it is used for so many things. I mean, like it serves so many purposes: vegetation, plantation, forests, home to so many animals, humans, all of us, right? And that makes it such an important resource. Not just that, it in itself is a living system. Now this is a word you will find in your book. Now what do we mean by living system? So living system is something which is kind of self-organizing, okay? It self-organizes life forms, okay, by interacting with the environment. So it interacts with the air, water, whatever is around it, and it organizes itself in sense of life forms, okay? That is what soil is. Now, how did the soil started forming, and what are the factors that its formation depends on? So as I told you, it takes years to form soil. But it is, I mean, like a lot of factors are involved in its formation. The factors which are, first of all, what is the process of soil formation, bacha? So mountains basically, break down into small particles. Then those particles rub off each other and they form the dust, which ultimately becomes the soil. This is the shorter version that I'm telling you about soil formation. So what is the major factor do you think that will be determined, that we determine out of this explanation? It is the rock, right? The parent rock, the bedrock, which breaks down and defines the nature of the soil, okay? So that is one of the most important factor. Then of course the climate, weather, vegetation, all of these things are very important. Now what leads to the formation of soil? So there are multiple forces all around that acts on the formation of soil, which leads to the ultimate formation of this dust particles. So on the mountain, on those small already broken down stones, all of this, there are multiple forces of nature that acts on it, okay? It could be, water, actions of running water, wind, glaciers, the temperature, climate, as I told you. All of these together determine the formation of the soil, the factor and the forces that determines the nature, okay? Now another thing that is very important that we need to keep in mind, that the changes that happen in the soil, whether it is organic, okay, or non-organic or chemical, both are equally important. Now another thing that we should always keep in mind, or which comes to my notice next, is that soil consists of both the things. It consists of organic as well as it consists of inorganic materials. Now what do we mean by that? Organic, anything that contains life, which means the plants, animals, all of this is there in soil, alive and dead. That constitutes the organic material of the soil, okay? Now what do we mean by inorganic material? Then you might be wondering, ma'am, what inorganic is there in the soil then? It in itself is a living system. It consists of the living organisms. Then what is inorganic there? So bacha, the stones, the sand particles, all of these things that's found there can be counted under the inorganic materials, okay? The smaller part of the rocks, all these things can constitute the, actually constitutes the inorganic material of the inorganic part of the soil, okay? Now let's move to classification of soil. Now what do we mean by this? So as I told you, a lot of things determines what kind of soil will be formed, how will it be formed, and as a result of this, various kinds of soils are seen across the country. The variety, the nature, the characteristics are very different depending upon how they were formed, under what climate, what parent rock they had, all those factors which determine its nature. So depending on this, it has been classified in the following types of soil. Okay, alluvial, black, red and oil, laterite, arid and forest and mountain soil. Now let's start with the first one and talk about alluvial soil. Okay, where do we find alluvial soil? So most importantly, it is found in the northern plains of the country, right below Himalayas. When the rivers flow, they bring in a lot of fertile mineral and nutrient rich soil, silt, sand from the mountains and deposits it in the northern plain. The part, if you go in the map, if you look, Haryana, Rajasthan, some part of Rajasthan, not all of it, Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, all of these forms the northern plains, and the entire region has this most fertile soil called alluvial soil. Okay, it is the most widespread soil and is very fertile, and that's why these areas are highly dependent on soil, very populated, depends a lot on agriculture and cultivation. Okay, and that is why places like Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, some part of Gujarat, some part of Rajasthan are because of the fertility of the land, highly dependent on agriculture and are farmers. I mean, like, that's their primary work. Now, as I told you, it's basically these rivers run down at a very faster pace. Okay, see, anything running down from a slope will be very high at speed, and the same thing happens with the river. So what happens, they cut off all the soils over there, and the mountains are very rich, okay, very nutrient rich. So they bring in all that soil and they are depositing it. And what are these rivers that we are talking about? So one of the most largest river systems, we are talking about Indus, we are talking about Ganga, we are talking about Brahmaputra, all these. Okay, they bring in all that nutrients and deposit in the plains and make it most fertile. Now let's talk about importance, as I told you. So as I told you, bacha, this is found lot. Now it's not just restricted to the northern plains, in some part of the peninsular rivers, okay, somewhere near Mahanadi, Narmada, all these places also, little bit, not everywhere, some parts of it we find alluvial soil present there also. Okay, now it is made up of silt, sand and clay, which has been brought down from the mountains, and they are very rich. Okay, they are very rich in nutrients like potash, phosphoric acid and lime, which is very good for cultivation of crops. Okay, now what kind of crops are we talking about? So because they are so rich in nutrients, anything can be grown over here. You talk about sugarcane, you talk about paddy, wheat, any other cereals, pulses, all can be cultivated on this land. Now this land, bacha, further is divided in two parts, okay, based on aging, as in how old is the soil. Now why are we talking about age? So one very interesting fact I'll tell you. So what happens when these rivers are coming down from Himalayas, or for any mountain for that matter, they're coming at a very high speed, okay, and they're bringing all these sand, silt, which is very nutrient rich and mineral rich, along with it. Now if that keeps on happening, a thick layer should keep on forming, but that doesn't happen. Why? So they run at a very high speed, and that's why they carry all of that from the mountains. Then they come in the flat land. Okay, after river they come in the flat land, which is the plains, which is the northern plains, which has this alluvial soil. So over here the speed all of a sudden you can say reduces. Okay, why? Because the area is now increasing. It's not at a slope, it's a flat land. So on a flat land, what happens, if you imagine, if you're running down a slope, your speed would be higher, and on a flat land you would be walking at a normal pace. So the pace of the river also normalizes. Now they're slowly leaving all those new silt, sand, everything that they brought along with themselves, which is very rich, very new and very fertile. Now as they're moving forward, they will keep washing out the old soil and depositing the new soil, and that's why the fertility always stays intact of the alluvial soil. But still, because of all this process, there is always formation of new soil, and hence there will be some part of it which will remain which will still contain the old soil. Now based on this, we have been the soils have been divided into Bangar and Khadar. Okay, Bangar is basically the old soil and Khadar is the new soil. Now there's a slight change in the texture of it as well. So Bangar, you can see, is more coarse, okay, and has more conquered particles, has more conquered, okay, stony kind of structure, which is very coarse, and that makes us less fertile compared to Khadar, which is also the new soil. Now if it's new, it will naturally be more fertile. So it is very, the Khadar soil contains very fine particles and is more fertile. Bacha, we can understand the presence of conquer in the soil is inversely proportional to the fertility of the soil. Now you might be thinking, ma'am has started teaching maths, but no, what I mean is, if the conquer is more, fertility will be less. If fertility is more, naturally conquer will be less. It's inversely, it goes opposite. If one is more, the other will be less, in whichever order you take. Okay, so that is what I was telling you, that Bhangar, also because of being old and having more conquer particles, nodules, is less fertile compared to Khadar. Okay, now other thing that we see, which is in terms of texture, another kind of distribution, or you can say segregation, that we have done in the alluvial soil is, so what happens near the Piedmont, Piedmont plains. Now what are Piedmont plains? So Piedmont plains are basically, bacha, the area between the hill, the slope and the flatland. The area in between is known as Piedmont. Now the area over there, the soil that it has is slightly coarse, okay, and it is found near areas such as Dwars, Chaos and Terai. Okay, they are basically the foothills, as I told you, area between the main hill and the flatland, the hill, the foot of the hill. Okay, over there, it is very common. Also the texture of it is very coarse right at that part. So what kind of you can guess which kind of alluvial soil is more found over there, right? Okay, now let's move to the next kind of soil, which is black soil. Now as the name suggests, it actually is black in color. It's absolutely black, and it is also known as regur soil. And bacha, this is very good for growth of cotton. I mean, if you think of black soil, the first thing that should come to your mind is cotton. Okay, and that is why this is also known as black cotton soil. Now it is found in the Deccan Trap, the basalt region, as you know, which is spread over the northwest part of the Deccan Plateau. Now it is also the content, it is made up of, okay, now what makes it black in color? First of all, so how is black soil formed? So earlier what used to happen, there used to be a lot of volcanic eruptions. Now this is, I'm talking long back, and these volcanic eruptions would have lava which would dry up, and that lava after drying up would become blackish in color, which would also be very fertile because it would bring up all the minerals and nutrients right from the under surface of the earth. So these lava, when would turn into these dust particle, forms the black soils, which determines the color of it. Okay, now whatever it is rich in, it is kind of short, has poor content of phosphoric. Okay, it has less content of phosphoric, but it can hold a lot of moisture. Okay, and that is why that determines the two different kind of textures of black soil, which I will quickly get at. Let's first discuss what are the areas where black soil is found. So black soil is found in a lot of all of these areas, Deccan Plateaus, northwest area, Maharashtra, Malwa, Saurashtra, Madhya Pradesh, some part of Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh also. And as I told you, so it is very fine, okay, and it has a very extremely fine clay kind of material. Okay, and if you have played with clay, you can feel how fine it feels against your skin, right? That's how the soil is. And as I told you, it is, although it is poor in phosphoric, but it is rich in calcium carbonate, magnesium carbonate, potash and lime. Okay, now guys, as I was telling you that it has a lot of power to hold moisture, but it doesn't mean, and on the contrary, it doesn't hold moisture the entire year. So it behaves in very two extreme manners. Okay, you can say it's like this child who goes crazy all of a sudden and then calms down all of a sudden. So when it is hot, the entire soil, that entire area will just go dry and develop huge cracks. Okay, deep cracks. Although these cracks are actually good, that kind of helps it in aeration. It helps it in breathing, it gives the gap, and those gaps help the soil to breathe in, to take the oxygen, to increase the fertility, which further helps in the next season when the harvest is supposed to happen, when the cultivation or plantation is supposed to happen. Okay, but as soon as it rains, right after the first shower, as I told you, it can retain a lot of moisture, as a result of which it becomes very very sticky. Okay, clay kaisa hota hai? How do you feel clay? You've used clay, so it's very sticky, and if not tilled immediately, if not plowed, if not immediately prepared for cultivation, it will be very difficult to work on this land. So that's how black soil works. Then comes our red and yellow soil which is like changes its colors. Okay, it's not very trustworthy. Maybe it keeps on changing its color. Today if you see it will be red, tomorrow if you see it will be yellow, you'll be like, dude, was I in the same place? But yeah, and what determines this? So let's first of all talk about what is red and yellow soil. So actually red and yellow soil is formed by crystalline igneous rocks. Okay, now these rocks are actually found in the places where the rainfall is very very less. It doesn't rain a lot in these regions, bacha. Okay, and what are these regions that I'm talking about? Deccan Plateau, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, all these areas would comparatively have less rainfall. Now what determines the color of the soil, and what makes it change its color? So the soil has a diffusion of iron into the crystalline and metamorphic rocks, which makes the soil naturally red. However, whenever it gets hydrated, whenever it gets wet with less amount of rainfall, so as I told you, in these areas rainfall is less, which means it will not keep raining all the time, and the soil will not be wet all the time. But whenever it changes its color in yellowish, as you can see in the picture. When it is diffused with iron and dry, it is red, and whenever it changes, it gets hydrated, it is wet, it changes its color into yellow. Okay, the next is laterite soil. Now laterite literally means brick. Okay, it has been derived from this Latin word later, which means brick. Okay, now this kind of soil is developed under tropical or subtropical climate. Now what is tropical or subtropical climate? So tropical climate is when the temperature is very high, it is very warm, and there is good amount of rainfall throughout the year. Heavy rainfall. Okay, now this kind of climate is known as tropical climate, and in these areas the laterite soil is found. Okay, now you can easily think it will obviously be in the southern part or the peninsular part of the country, because this is more tropical in nature in terms of climate. In the northern side it's not as much, right? So now what happens? So as a result of very very heavy rain, what happens when it rains heavily? It will wash off the top layer of the soil, and which leads to intense leaching due to heavy rain, as I told you. So it keeps raining throughout the year. So because of the water, the first layer gets washed off. Okay, and that is known as leaching. Now you might be thinking, what is leaching? So leaching, bacha, is basically loss of nutrients because of rain or something from the top layer of the soil when it gets washed out. And that is what happens with the laterite soils because of the heavy rain throughout the year, which leads to the soil being deficient in plant nutrients. Now naturally it will be less in nutrients, because most of the nutrients, minerals, or not minerals exactly, but most of the nutrients which is used by the plants is found in the top layer of the soil. Now it is getting leached out, it's getting washed out, so naturally it will be deficient in nutrients. It doesn't make it very simple for us to understand. Another reason why it is kind of less, or it lacks in you can say, as I was telling you, in plant nutrients, or you can say in organic nutrients, is because the temperature in this place is very very high. And what does high temperature do to microorganisms? Anywhere, microorganisms needs kind of moist and a little colder, not very cold, not very warm, that kind of moist, kind of humid, kind of circumstance to grow. Now because it is so hot that it kills all the microorganisms, bacteria, everything that grows in the soil, which also leads to it not being very very fertile or rich in humus or organic content, because everything gets killed because of high temperature. Okay, now as I was telling you, it is mostly found in the peninsular part. You can say Western Ghats, regions of Maharashtra, Orissa, etc. So these are the parts where rainfall is very heavy, and the temperature is very high throughout the year, which has tropical or subtropical kind of climate. Okay, now not it doesn't mean that this land is completely what do I say, completely uncultivable, that you cannot at all have harvest or cultivate this land. No, it is easily cultivable, but it needs a lot of care. The amount of effort that goes into the cultivation increases. So what needs is, it needs adequate amount of manure and chemical fertilizers. You have to increase the fertility a lot, and also and when that happens, it becomes very useful to grow crops like plantations like tea, coffee, cashew nuts, deciduous and evergreen forests. All of these after a point survive on this if the soil is taken good care of, which means that this is a soil which has a lot of tantrum and needs to be satisfied in that way. Okay, now let's move to the next, which is arid soil. Now arid soil is a difficult person. It requires a lot of attention because it is very dry. Okay, and it's mostly found in the area, you can think of the desert or maybe near desert, dry areas which are okay. And what is the color of the soil? So it varies from somewhere red to brown, between red to brown. The more drier it is, it will be more how would I say, reddish. Okay, now how does it look like? The texture of the soil is very sandy. Okay, it is very like powdery, very sand kind of it feels. Okay, and sand is what is dry. Otherwise, the finer the salt is, the soil is, the more fertile it will be. But this soil is not really very fertile. Also, it is found in areas which has very dry climate and very high temperature. Okay. As a result of this, what happens, because of the dry climate and high temperature, whatever moisture is there in the soil quickly evaporates. Whatever water content is there in the soil quickly evaporates. Now whenever water evaporates, what will it leave behind? The salt content, right? And that makes the soil very saline in nature. Although this helps in production of soil, but it is very saline in nature. Okay, as I told you, some areas the salt content is very high, and by evaporating water it can be obtained. Soil is obtained from arid soils. Okay, now naturally it will lack in humus and moisture because it gets evaporated very quickly, and humus because similar to laterite soil or the climatic conditions over there, the microorganisms die. There is not already a lot of vegetation which will die and increase the fertility of the soil, and there is no water, there is not a lot of water over there to maintain the moisture and the fertility of the soil, which leads to it being comparatively less fertile. But again, this can also be cultivated with a good amount of artificial caring of providing water resources to it. It needs a lot of irrigation. And as I told you, it is found where? In the western parts of Rajasthan and northern Gujarat. Now think about, we discussed about Bhangar soil where the conker content was more. However, it was more compared to the Khadar soil, but it made it less fertile than the Khadar soil, alluvial soil, types of alluvial soil. Okay. But over here, the conker is found a lot. The content of conker is a lot, bacha. Okay. And especially that, so if you remember, I told you, the more the conker, the less fertile the soil would be. And the same thing happens over here also. Now the content of the conker keeps increasing as you go down and down in the different layers of the soil. Okay, as you keep going in the depth of this kind of soil, in the arid soil, you will see that it keeps increasing the content of the conker, which also makes it difficult for the water to get absorbed into the soil, and that is also why this region is very dry. And why does this increase? It increases in lower horizon due to the increasing calcium content. As you go down, calcium keeps increasing, and that's why those conkers are found over there. Which brings me to the last type of soil, forest and mountain soils. As the name suggests, these are found in forests and especially in mountains, in hilly areas. Okay, now what does this soil look like? Now its texture, it's very interesting, Vacha. The texture of the forest soil actually varies where it is. On the top it will be different, at the foothill it will be slightly different. It is not uniform throughout the hills and the mountains. Okay, now towards the foothill where the rivers are more, the soil is more fertile, more loamy and silty, more kind of, it has more moisture, it's more sticky comparatively than the soil that is found at the higher part, okay, at the higher altitude. That side it will be more coarse in the upper slopes. Okay, as a result of this, it faces denudation. Now what is denudation? So denudation is wearing of top layers, when the top layer of the soil gets again eroded, okay, gets washed out, eroded, flown away by the wind, whatever. Basically it loses the top part of it. Now this is in the snow covered Himalayas, because the soil over there is more coarse, more dry, so it will naturally get eroded because of landslides and multiple other reasons. Okay, and as a result of this, it is also acidic with low humus content. Now why is the humus low? What is humus? Humus are basically dead and decaying plants and animals, okay, which makes the soil very fertile. Now because if the top layer of the soil keeps getting washed out, keeps getting denudation, because of denudation, if they keep losing the top layer of the soil, all these things that might have been found over there will get washed out, will get removed. So naturally the content of the humus will be less in deeper soil. Right? Okay, and as I was telling you, in the valley sides and all of those sides, it is very loamy and silty, where the water is more, but in the upper slopes it will be coarsely grained. Okay, now let's talk about soil erosion. So what is soil erosion? Bacha, it is basically removal of the top layer of the soil, okay, and it gets subsequent washing down of the top soil, which is most nutrient rich and which supports the life, in simple words. That if you lose that is known as erosion of soil. Now nature has everything balanced in it. Okay, when nature designs something, it thinks it through. So the erosion method of erosion and formation of soil was balanced by nature. It went hand in hand together. If this happened 1, this would also happen 1. If this happened 10, this would also happen 10. But then what happened? Humans. You and me happened, and we destroyed the balance everywhere, including with the soil formation and erosion. Now there are a lot of human activities, there are a lot of activities that you and I do which increases the proportion of soil erosion compared to the proportion of soil formation. As a result of which the soil erosion is more, we are losing more soil than it is getting formed. Now that makes it a worrisome factor for our worry. Okay, now what are natural causes which leads to soil erosion? Winds, glaciers, all of these things, heavy rainfall. But what are human causes? So we do so much of deforestation, overgrazing, faulty methods of agriculture, also, defective methods of farming are also responsible for this. I will tell you in a while what are these defecting methods. I mean, like, what could that be? But let's look at what soil erosion, like what are different types of soil erosion and how does it happen. So what happens, Bacha, when there's a running water? Okay, what is running water? A water which is running at a very high speed, a water which is flowing at a very high speed, and it usually happens when it is from a higher slope, or for whatever reason, maybe there's a lot of water, but it is very, very intense in nature. It's kind of aggressive, you can say. Okay, it is very forceful. What happens with things which are very forceful? It takes along a lot of things together, I mean, like, along with it. That is what was happening with the water on the mountains as well. It was carrying all that silt and soil and nutrients along with it, right? Taking it away from the mountain. But what happens when it happens on the soil, on the clayey soil? If the water is running at a very high speed, it is very intense, very aggressive. What it ends up doing is cutting narrow channels in it, okay, cutting the soil, which makes it unfit for cultivation eventually. This part eventually is known as badland. Okay, it becomes useless for cultivation, and this erosion, I mean, like, the channels that is formed, those narrow lanes kind of things that's formed, is known as gullies. Okay, for example, this happens a lot in Chambal Basin, which is also called ravines. Bacha, this is a very important point. What are ravines? So ravines are the cuts formed because of running water in the clay soil and those deep channels in the Chambal Basin. Okay, important from examinations perspective. Then sheet erosion. What is sheet erosion? Now, what do you mean by sheet? Sheet is something which is broader, wider, right? Okay, channels were narrow, but this is wider, which means a whole layer of water flows and washes off this layer of soil. Now soil bacha is found in different sheets, different layers, as you know, and which is the most nutrient rich, which the vegetation depends on, the top layer. So when a whole layer of water flows, it washes off the sheet of soil that was there along with it. Okay, the topsoil gets washed along with it, and that is another way which causes soil erosion. Then of course wind. Similarly, how forceful water can wash off the soil, the top layer of the soil, similarly wind will also do that. The soil which is loose off, okay, with the sand, the dry, the coarse part will get washed off, sorry, will get blown off because of wind. Okay, that is known as wind erosion. Now as I was telling you initially, that defective methods, okay, faulty methods, wrong farming methods also leads to soil erosion. Now what are these wrong farming methods? If the land is not plowed, okay, the plowing is not done in a proper way, wrong plowing and such practices can also cause soil erosion. Okay, bacha. Now we've spoken so much of how we lose soil, how does it get destroyed because of human activities, leave alone from natural activities, but human activities is increasing it. Then of course there must be something in the hands of the humans to also preserve it, to also conserve it. If we are putting in extra intervention in destroying it, we definitely need to put more and more efforts in order to conserve it. So how can we conserve soil? So the very first thing is terrace cultivation. Now what is terrace? What do you mean by terrace? It's basically the roof kind of structure that we have in our houses, right? In Hindi we call chat also, or balcony sort of thing. And the same kind of terrace or the rooftop kind of thing can be built on the slopes of the mountains or anywhere where there is a slant land. Now why do we do this? What's the whole idea? So as I told you in the beginning itself, whenever there is a slope, the water will run at a high speed. Okay, now the running water is very forceful, very aggressive, so it will take a lot of things along with it, causing a lot of erosion. So in order to calm down the water, in order to reduce the speed of the running water, what we do is we create slopes, we create steps, okay, on the slopes. We do not leave it a flat land so that the water can rush out, washing everything away. So as you can see in the picture, steps like structure on the slope is created so that what happens, it was flowing at a high speed, now it has to cross over a certain part of flat land, which will slow down its speed. Then the same thing will happen on the next step, and the same thing will happen on the next step. That will reduce the speed, which will reduce the erosion. Not just that, whatever it would have eroded from the first step will get, you know, in the flat land. Remember what I told you happens with the alluvial soil? Those things come from the river because it was moving at a very high speed and get deposited in the flat land. The same concept will be applied here. Whatever it is taking along with it from the upper slope will get deposited on the next step. Then again, if it is carrying something from that slope, will get deposited on the next step. So these terrace kind of structures is made, which slows down the erosion process and keeps on depositing whatever has been lost from the previous step on the next step, which reduces the amount of washing out of the top layer of soil to a great extent. Now this is done in central Himalayas where proper developed terrace farming is done. The next is contour plowing. Now what do we mean by contour? Contour basically means bacha making outlines which is representing natural shape. So what is different between, so let me first explain you what is contour plowing, and then this might get a little confusing between terrace and contour plowing. You might be thinking, ma'am, it's one not the same thing, right? What is it? How is it different? Like, why are we categorizing it as two different kinds of plowing? So I'll tell you in a minute. So what happens? We draw contour lines. Okay, lines are drawn as you can see in picture, and this is also happening over the slopes, and it decelerate, which means accelerates opposite, decelerates, reduces the speed of the flow of the water. Now coming back to my question, now this is the same thing that was happening in terrace farming also, right? Then how is this different? So terrace is something that we form, humans, it's man-made, okay? Humans make those terraces, make those steps on the slope to reduce the speed of the flowing water. But contour plowing, as I told you, contour means drawing outlines which is representing the natural shape. which means on the slope there would be some natural outlines already. We enhance that and use that to do the plowing, which will reduce the speed of the water. So it's simple as natural and man-made. That's the difference. Okay. Another is strip cropping. Okay. What is strip cropping? So literally in large parts of land, strips of crops are made. Okay. Alternatively. Now what is the alteration? What do we put in alteration? We put large grasses, strips of grasses. So this is one line of crop, one line of grass which will grow larger, bigger than the crops will put. And alternatively these strips are put. Now what is the idea? Now if the wind is blowing very fast, okay, those grass will help in breaking the speed of the wind. How does this work? You might have seen, you feel more wind in open lands, but if it has boundaries, buildings, which is breaking the speed of the wind, you don't feel it as strong, as intense. And that's the whole idea. If those longer grasses are there, it will break the speed of the wind, it will break the flow of the wind, and it will not be as strong as it was earlier. Now, if it is not as aggressive, not as intense, not as strong, naturally the erosion will also reduce, right? Because the higher the speed, the higher will be the greater will be the erosion, the more soil will be blown away by it. But that is what we are cutting off. We're cutting the flow of the wind. Then we have something called shelter belts. As you can see in the picture, there are trees in the field, right? Now what are these trees for? So these trees create shelter. What they do is, definitely the wind will not be able to blow. The trees will also create that blockage. It will hold the soil. It will also act as a boundary which will not let the cattle or wild animals enter and destroy the field. So it basically is sheltering the whole field and the soil, and it helps in stabilizing the soil. This is one concept that is also used in drier areas by putting up shrubs, whatever trees that can survive there, in helping stabilization of the sand dunes. It doesn't get blown away. Okay. So with this, guys, we are done with the chapter. If you have any questions, make sure you're putting it in the comment box so that I can take it up in the doubt and the mentee session. Now let's quickly look at the homework question. The red soil is red in color because it is rich in potash, it is rich in iron compounds, it is rich in humus, none of the above. And with this, guys, we are done with the session. If you think this video was good and it helped you, make sure you hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that the moment we are going to start with the doubt and the mentee session, you get the notification first of all. And of course, do tell me how did you like the session in the comment box. And if you have any question, make sure to post it in the comment box so that I'm able to resolve your doubts. Okay, and I'll see you very soon in the next session. Till then, stay tuned, guys. Take care, stay home, stay safe. Bye bye. Have a nice day.